Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. At Hogwarts, first-year students are sorted into houses based on their inherent qualities. The brave go to Gryffindor, the wise to Ravenclaw, the hard-working to Hufflepuff, and the cunning and ambitious to Slytherin. And although the sorting hat fairly highlights the strengths of each house, Slytherin is often portrayed in books and films as a breeding ground for future dark wizards. But what if we were wrong? What if Slytherin qualities are actually worthy of respect, even admiration? Let's explore why Slytherin doesn't deserve its dark reputation, and what we all could learn from the students of this misunderstood house. Enjoy the video. Number 1, determination. Let's begin with one of the most underrated traits, determination. It's not about flashy slogans, but the quiet, relentless drive to keep going, despite pain and isolation. The best example of this is Severus Snape. Throughout the saga, Snape appeared to be a villain, strict, cruel, vengeful. But in Deathly Hallows, we learn the truth. He had been protecting Harry all along, the son of the woman he once loved. Snape kept fighting even when everyone thought he had betrayed them. He deceived Voldemort, outwitted the Order of the Phoenix, and lived a double life under constant threat of death. That kind of perseverance is heroic. And it's a quality any house, and not just Slytherin, should strive to embrace. Number 2, ambition. Slytherin is all about ambition, big goals, sometimes terrifying, but always honest. Ambition isn't inherently bad, it's the courage to reach beyond your limits and risk failure to achieve greatness. Severus Snape aimed to become the best potioneer, and he did. Tom Riddle craved ultimate power and nearly got it. Even Draco Malfoy, regardless of what you think of him, craved recognition and influence. Ambition moves the world forward. Yes, sometimes it leads to dangerous paths, but without it, progress wouldn't exist. Ambitious students were the ones winning the House Cup and thriving in their careers. They aimed high and pursued their goals with everything they had. Number 3, cunning. What did the sorting hat say in Philosopher's Stone? Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends. Cunning doesn't always mean manipulation. It's resourcefulness. It's knowing how to stay one step ahead. It's not just about learning spells, but knowing how to use them wisely. In a magical world full of secrets and dangers, cunning can save your life. It's the ability to think outside the box, strategize, and predict your opponent's next move. In any other school, this would be called brilliance. At Hogwarts, it gets dismissed as typical Slytherin behavior. Number 4, intelligence. Although intelligence is traditionally associated with Ravenclaw, Slytherin has produced many brilliant minds. Take Snape's potion textbook, filled with his own handwritten formulas and invented spells. Or Professor Slughorn, whose knowledge and connections were priceless. Even Lord Voldemort, however reviled, was a wizard of exceptional intellect. Slytherins didn't just memorize theory, they innovated, they created, they experimented. And more than that, they were perceptive, they understood people. It's a different kind of intelligence, and no less valuable. Number 5, always a step ahead. The one trait that makes Slytherins truly dangerous rivals. They think 2 steps ahead. In Half-Blood Prince, Draco Malfoy plotted to assassinate Dumbledore. He was only a teenager, yet he devised a complex plan, using the Room of Requirement, employing Polyjuice Potion, covering his tracks, all right under the noses of Harry Potter and the Hogwarts staff. Harry sensed something was off, but couldn't prove it. Malfoy was always just out of reach. That ability to be one move ahead is what defines a true Slytherin. Number 6, self-control. Severus. Snape stood in silence as students mocked him. As Sirius Black hexed him in broad daylight. As James Potter dangled him upside down by his ankle for fun. He clenched his jaw. He swallowed the rage. "You think the dark arts are harmless fun, do you?" he once asked, voice steady, eyes burning. Snape never exploded. He waited, he endured. That control made him dangerous and essential. Years later, that same self-mastery allowed him to deceive Voldemort, the greatest legilimens alive. Snape looked the Dark Lord in the eyes and lied. He stood beside Death Eaters who had killed his friends. He taught Harry Potter and never once revealed the truth behind his protection. He carried grief, love, guilt, and vengeance, all beneath a calm, bitter surface. That stillness was his armor. And in the end, it saved more lives than any spell. For a student, that kind of restraint is more powerful than a wand. It's what helps you think clearly when emotions spiral, what lets you make decisions when others freeze or panic. It's the quiet strength behind every brilliant action. In Snape's case, it wasn't applause he wanted. It was the mission, the result, the protection of a boy he could barely stand, and he did it all without flinching, without ever losing control. Number 7, leadership skills. Before he became Voldemort, Tom Riddle was magnetic. Even as a student, he drew others in with charm, confidence, and a frightening kind of clarity. He didn't just lead, he inspired loyalty, even fear. "You're not going to tell me I'm not the most brilliant student in this school," he once said to Professor Slughorn. And no one argued. He built a following inside Hogwarts long before his name was cursed. His leadership wasn't loud, it was controlled, precise, and utterly persuasive. That's what made him dangerous. Draco Malfoy followed a similar path in a quieter, more human way. He led Crabbe and Goyle not just through fear, but through influence. Even when he faltered, they followed. In Half-Blood Prince, he organized, delegated, and gave orders, flawed as they were. He had presence. His classmates looked to him for cues, for power, for direction. In Slytherin, leadership isn't about volume. It's about command. Used with the right purpose, that same leadership can build instead of destroy. It can unite students in clubs, lead teams to victory, drive projects to success. The Slytherin ability to organize, influence, and motivate others isn't something to fear. It's something to respect. When guided by integrity, it becomes a force that shapes not just schools, but the world beyond. Number 8. Determination. Bellatrix. Lestrange never hesitated. Her loyalty to Voldemort was obsessive, but her drive was terrifyingly focused. She didn't seek power for herself. She craved his approval, his cause, his vision. Every spell she cast, every life she took, was with one goal in mind. "The Dark Lord will rise again," she hissed, in the order of the Phoenix, her eyes burning with purpose. Twisted, yes. But her determination made her one of the most feared witches alive. She never lost sight of what she wanted. Then there's Horace Slughorn, a man of charm, wit, and clear ambition. He didn't chase danger, he chased opportunity. He built his slug club like a gardener, tending roses. Talented students, powerful parents, future promise. He knew exactly whom to invite and why. "These are the movers and shakers, my boy," he told Harry. Slughorn never raised his wand in battle, but he positioned himself where influence lived. His goals were subtle, but steady, always in sight. That's Slytherin ambition, not just loud declarations or bold action, but quiet, relentless motion toward a goal. It's in the student who plans their NEWTs in second year. It's in the witch who networks at every Yule Ball. Determination isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it wears a polite smile and keeps excellent notes. And in the halls of Hogwarts, that kind of focus can shape a future more surely than any charm. Number 9. Practicality. Lucius Malfoy didn't fight out of passion. He chose sides the way a chess player moves pieces, with calculation. He aligned himself with Voldemort not for ideology, but because it served his family's influence. And when the tide began to turn, he didn't go down with the ship. He pulled back. He stopped fighting. "My lord," he once said carefully, I do not know where the boy is." Lucius was never reckless. He was a strategist, even in the middle of a war. This kind of thinking may not look heroic, but it's smart. Gryffindors rush into battle with their hearts on fire. Slytherins pause. They ask, what will this cost? What will this bring? It's not that they don't care. It's that they refuse to waste. In school, that means not taking on 10 classes when 5 will do. In life, it means knowing which fights to pick and which ones to walk away from. Slughorn understood this too. He wasn't chasing glory. He built relationships that lasted. "You are talented, Tom," he once told Riddle. "I can help you go far." That wasn't sentiment, it was networking. Slughorn didn't waste energy on drama. He saved it for opportunities. He created a web of favors and influence, and in doing so carved out safety and power for himself in dangerous times. Practicality doesn't mean heartlessness. It means efficiency. It means knowing how to get the most out of your time, your talent, your magic. A practical student doesn't overextend. A practical wizard doesn't fight every battle. And in a world as unstable as the one beyond the castle walls, that kind of thinking isn't cold. It's necessary. Number 10. Loyalty. Severus Snape did not fight for glory. He did not care for medals or praise. What moved him was one thing: loyalty. His love for Lily Potter, buried under layers of silence and regret, burned through every decision he made. "Always," he said, when Dumbledore asked if he still loved her. That one word became the heart of his story. It was his reason to betray Voldemort. His reason to protect Harry. His reason to die in the end with nothing but the memory of a girl he once called friend. That kind of devotion isn't loud. It doesn't wear a scarlet cloak or demand applause. But it's stronger than any wand. Snape fooled the Dark Lord for years because of it. He endured hatred from students, suspicion from allies, and cruelty from enemies, and never once broke his promise. He showed the kind of loyalty that lives in silence and sacrifice, and in doing so proved that Slytherins can love just as fiercely as any Gryffindor. Then there was Narcissa Malfoy. A mother, standing in the ruins of a war, asked only one question: "Is Draco alive?" When she lied to Voldemort, saying Harry was dead, she wasn't saving the boy who lived, she was saving her son. That lie changed the course of the battle. It gave Harry the chance to rise again, not because Narcissa was brave in the traditional sense, but because she was loyal to her blood, to her family, to the only thing she had left. True loyalty is not blind obedience. It's not about following a leader. It's about standing for someone, a friend, a family, an ideal, even when it hurts. Slytherins understand that. And in a school filled with shifting alliances, secret rooms, and ancient rivalries, the quiet power of loyalty is a gift few recognize but all need. Number 11, caution. Caution isn't fear. It's precision. It's watching before acting. And no one embodied that better than Severus Snape. Every step he took was calculated. He fooled Voldemort, Dumbledore, the entire wizarding world. And he did it for years. That level of deception takes brilliance, yes, but even more, it takes restraint. One wrong word, one glance at the wrong moment, and he would have been dead. The Dark Lord believes, I do not know the full truth, Snape told Bellatrix, masking truth beneath half-lies. He survived because he was careful. Draco Malfoy, though less polished, also tried to walk the tightrope. In Half-Blood Prince, he was given an impossible task: kill Albus Dumbledore. But instead of charging in blindly, he plotted. He tested the vanishing cabinet. He used Crabbe and Goyle with Polyjuice Potion. He avoided direct confrontation. It wasn't flawless, it wasn't heroic, but it was cautious, and in the end he couldn't bring himself to strike. "No," he said, wand trembling. "I have to do this. I have to." That trembling wasn't weakness. It was the weight of a boy trying not to fall. Slytherins don't leap. They study the ground first. In a school where a staircase might vanish mid-step and a professor could be a werewolf, caution isn't just a trait. It's a shield. It's what separates those who survive from those who charge into danger for the sake of pride. Harry, Ron, and Hermione often rushed in, and while that makes for heroic stories, it also nearly killed them more than once. Slytherins would have asked, is it necessary? Is it worth the cost? Caution doesn't make you a coward. It makes you deliberate. In a world full of spells, secrets, and silent dangers, this Slytherin quality is a survival skill. And not just for war, for life. When the time comes to choose a path, whether it's love, loyalty, or legacy, the ability to pause, to think, to measure risk before stepping forward, that's not hesitation. That's wisdom wrapped in silence. Number 12. Survival instinct. Self-preservation is often mistaken for selfishness, but for Slytherins it's something else entirely. It's wisdom, a kind of instinct that whispers when to fight and when to walk away. When the Battle of Hogwarts began, many Slytherins left. To outsiders it looked like cowardice, but to a Slytherin it was strategy. There is no shame in survival, Horace Slughorn once said, only in wasting it, and that line, though never spoken aloud in the books, feels carved into the heart of their house. Draco Malfoy understood this better than most. When Voldemort took over Hogwarts, Draco didn't rush into rebellion like Neville or Ginny. He stayed close to danger but kept his head down, not out of fear, but out of understanding. He knew he was being watched. He knew that one wrong move could get his entire family killed. In Half-Blood Prince, when Harry corners him in the bathroom, Draco is already breaking under the pressure. "I have to do this," he says. "He'll kill me otherwise." That isn't weakness, it's survival. Even Snape's entire existence is a testament to self-preservation used for good. He walks a razor's edge between two dark worlds, never fully trusted by either, yet he survives long enough to fulfill Dumbledore's final request, long enough to protect the boy he once hated. He doesn't act from impulse or emotion. He calculates, he endures, he survives. Not every battle is won by rushing forward. Sometimes the smartest move is to live another day. Slytherins know this. They aren't the ones who shout the loudest or take the glory, but when the dust settles and the fires die, they're often still standing, watching, planning, waiting for the next move. Number 13. Intuition. Of all the traits that make Slytherin so distinctive, ambition, cunning, resourcefulness, there is one that is too often overlooked, even though it courses through the house like a secret river: intuition. This inner compass, this nearly unspoken sense of timing and direction, is not unique to Slytherin, but it is there that it blooms most fully. Intuition is not taught. It is not measured by albuels or taught by professors. And yet it can be the very thing that decides whether one survives, succeeds, or understands. For the students of Hogwarts, regardless of house, it is a trait that deserves more attention, more praise, and more imitation. Slytherins don't merely calculate, they anticipate. They know when to pause in the hallway and let others pass, when to speak with a soft voice in the common room, and when to stare boldly across the great hall. It is something deeper than observation. It is knowing without being told. In a castle as ancient and alive as Hogwarts, where staircases shift and secrets lie buried in stone, such instinct is no less than a superpower. Draco Malfoy, often dismissed as a spoiled boy from a dark lineage, carried intuition like a hidden dagger. Beneath his smug exterior was a sharp sense of danger that stirred long before others felt it. When Voldemort returned and began his silent invasion of the Ministry and the school, Draco's posturing faded. He sensed the truth before it was written in the sky or shouted in the halls. He knew, as only a Slytherin could, that the Dark Lord was not merely a political shift or an ideological return. He was an uncontrollable force, a tempest that devoured both enemy and ally. Draco's intuition told him that loyalty to Voldemort was not survival. It was suicide with ceremony. In his 6th year, Draco's mission to kill Dumbledore was not undertaken with ambition, but with dread. He was cornered, yet even in that trap, his instincts fought back. He delayed, he hesitated, he did not kill. The boy who had always wanted to prove himself now understood something deeper, that some acts forever alter the soul. His heart raced with more than fear, it raced with foresight. The walls of Hogwarts may not have spoken, but something within them whispered that he was on the brink of becoming a monster. He chose not to cross that line. The decision, though incomplete and conflicted, was born not from logic nor even from morality, but from that silent Slytherin pulse of instinct. This same pulse beat just as strongly in Severus Snape. If any man in Hogwarts had cause to ignore his intuition, to cling to logic and oath, it was Snape. Bound by unbreakable vows and submerged in double-dealing, he lived a life in shadows, but even he, so analytical and controlled, had moments where logic would have failed him, and only instinct saved him. His ultimate allegiance to Dumbledore was not a calculated rebellion. It was born of that raw, gut-wrenching certainty that Voldemort was hollow at his core. Snape had served darkness and knew its texture. His intuition told him that this new darkness was not like the old. It was not a political movement or a righteous cause. It was annihilation. After Lily's death, Snape's path could have taken him anywhere. But something within, told him that repentance was not enough. He could not merely regret. He had to act. Again and again he made impossible decisions in impossible moments, not because he had all the facts, but because he had the feeling. That burning, unshakable sense that there was a better choice, even if it would never be understood. "Look at me," he whispered in his final breath, and in that moment his entire life's purpose snapped into focus. His every move had been guided by a feeling stronger than reason. Love, yes, but also intuition. He had known for years that Harry must live, even when others doubted. His instincts had screamed it long before Dumbledore laid it out. The advantage of intuition is most visible in times of crisis, but it thrives in subtler spaces too. A Slytherin may cross a threshold and know, without hearing a sound, that something is amiss. A glance, a gesture, the change in air pressure, these things matter. Slytherins by nature or training learn to read the room, the moment, the danger. They spot betrayal before it strikes. They sense silence before it becomes threatening. When Hermione Granger prepared for the Yule Ball, she saw choices. A Slytherin would have sensed undercurrents. She might have known that Ron's jealousy would not manifest in direct speech, but in cold stares. Intuition would have turned her head slightly sooner, caught the glance, felt the sting. Even Harry Potter, brave and bold Gryffindor that he was, leaned into this Slytherin sense more often than he realized. His survival in the Chamber of Secrets? Intuition told him to follow the basilisk's trail through the pipes, his choice to chase Quirrell and protect the stone. It was not merely bravery, it was a gut feeling that something was very wrong. He could not prove it, not yet, but the whisper was there. And when the hat placed him in Gryffindor and not Slytherin, it was because he asked it to, because he feared the very instincts that would save him again and again. Number 14, strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is not often celebrated at Hogwarts unless it results in winning the House Cup, outsmarting a teacher, or beating Slytherin in a Quidditch match. Yet it is precisely the kind of attribute that shaped some of the most successful, cunning, and resilient wizards the wizarding world has ever seen. And no house embodies it more thoroughly than Slytherin. While bravery, loyalty, and intelligence are shouted from the rooftops, Slytherin's hallmark, the quiet, deliberate art of thinking several moves ahead, remains underestimated. But what if this one Slytherin trait could benefit every student, no matter their house colours? There was a reason Horace Slughorn thrived in both peace and war. Unlike many professors, he understood that success wasn't only about what you knew or how bravely you acted, but also about how well you positioned yourself among others. He founded the Slug Club not simply to socialize, but to identify and nurture talent. His selection was deliberate. He chose students with potential influence, those with lineage, charm, power, or promise. To most outsiders, it looked like favoritism, but to those who observed closely, it was clear that Slughorn was building a network, a strategic lattice of future leaders, with himself at the center. This kind of long-game thinking is Slytherin to the core. Take, for example, how Slughorn positioned himself during Voldemort's rise. He did not fight openly, nor did he align with the Dark Lord. He instead used obscurity as a shield. He understood the danger of being too visible, the risk of alliances that might collapse, the value of keeping secrets. This was not cowardice. It was calculated survival. When Dumbledore came seeking his memories, Slughorn had already altered the truth in his mind. "I would say only that I was ashamed," he told Harry, and even that was a strategic confession. He knew what information could destroy him and what could be twisted into protection. His every move was a calculation. Compare this to the typical Gryffindor instinct: rush in, wand out, emotions high. Harry himself often acted before thinking, relying on gut feelings and moral compass. While this gave him his unique charm and heroism, it also placed him, and others, in avoidable danger. Slytherin's strategy might have saved him pain if adopted occasionally. When Harry retrieved the prophecy at the Department of Mysteries, it was out of a trap set by Voldemort, a master of Slytherin planning. Had Harry paused, assessed, and considered all angles before acting, Sirius might have lived. The lack of strategic foresight cost more than points. It cost lives. Even Draco Malfoy, often dismissed for arrogance and prejudice, exhibited moments of brilliant strategy. In his 6th year, Draco was tasked with the near-impossible, assassinate Dumbledore, but instead of charging into the task, he devised multiple approaches, one of which included the use of the vanishing cabinet. It took him a full year to repair it, all under the watchful eye of Hogwarts staff. That he succeeded in restoring such an artifact and used it to sneak Death Eaters into the school is a testament not only to his cunning, but to his meticulous planning. The emotional cost to Draco was immense, but the execution of the plan was undeniably clever. Luna Lovegood, a Ravenclaw, had intelligence of a different kind: intuitive, dreamy, reflective. But had she blended it with strategic planning, her talents might have been leveraged further in battle. Instead, she was often a spontaneous contributor rather than a central planner. In contrast, consider Blaise Zabini, who seldom took center stage but maintained alliances, observed quietly, and ensured he was always on the favorable side of power. Though not a hero, Zabini was never caught unprepared. That's the Slytherin difference. It's not about the spotlight, it's about control. The Slytherin ability to map outcomes can even be found in Severus Snape, whose double life required constant planning. Every expression, every allegiance, every step was calculated to maintain balance. He served Dumbledore, deceived Voldemort, taught students, and harbored secrets. He was a master strategist, playing the most dangerous game in the wizarding world. "You have no idea what I have done, what I have given up," he once told Harry, and the truth was layered in sacrifice and foresight. His life was a chessboard, and every move was survival, not just for himself, but for the larger cause. Ravenclaw students, brilliant as they were, often focused on knowledge in its purest form. But knowledge without strategy is like a spell without intention. It dissipates. Terry Boot might have known the theory behind Patronuses, but he lacked the strategic clarity to apply it under pressure. Hermione Granger, though not a Slytherin, had flashes of this trait. Her time-turner usage, her methodical planning for the Horcrux hunt. These were moments of Slytherin-caliber thinking, masked under Gryffindor bravery. Strategic thinking can also manifest in the mundane. During the Triwizard Tournament, Cedric Diggory approached each task with poise and thoughtfulness. But it was Harry, again guided by impulse, who shared the cup, not foreseeing the trap it might be. Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Mad-Eye Moody, manipulated the tournament so carefully that even Dumbledore was fooled. That level of deception required immense planning. Constant vigilance, he said, ironically warning of a trait he embodied, Slytherin thinking in disguise. House loyalty is a powerful thing, but it often becomes a blinder. Hufflepuffs are known for their dedication and teamwork, yet without strategy, even the best team effort can collapse. Susan Bones, Ernie Macmillan and others fought bravely at the Battle of Hogwarts, but few had roles beyond following leadership. Imagine if their loyalty had been fused with Slytherin strategy, a deliberate coordination of skills, a network of defense, a plan beyond the battlefield. The castle might have been fortified sooner, casualties might have lessened. In the world of Quidditch, tactics matter as much as talent. Slytherin teams, often accused of playing dirty, were usually just more prepared. Marcus Flint knew when to provoke fouls, when to stall, when to disrupt. While other houses saw it as cheating, Slytherin saw it as winning within, or bending the rules. It wasn't grace, it was results. And while that approach might seem unsportsmanlike, it speaks to a deeper truth, the importance of understanding the field, the players, and the outcomes before making a move. Number 15, ability to keep secrets. Of all the skills taught at Hogwarts, one of the most underrated is silence. Not silence for the sake of being quiet, but strategic silence. Knowing when to speak and when to withhold, when to ask questions and when to appear unaware. This is a Slytherin talent, refined and deliberate. Unlike the loud bravery of Gryffindor or the relentless curiosity of Ravenclaw, the strength of Slytherin often hides in plain sight. Their power lies in restraint, in the ability to observe, to guard, to protect information, as a weapon and a shield. It is not deception, it is wisdom, a wisdom learned from centuries of maneuvering in shadows where one misstep could cost a fortune, a life, or a reputation. To know a secret is to hold a key, but to protect a secret is to own the entire door. That is a lesson Slytherins never need to be taught. It is ingrained in their very bones. Severus Snape embodied this gift so completely that he fooled even Voldemort himself. Throughout the Second Wizarding War, Snape moved through Hogwarts, through Death Eater meetings, and through the corridors of power with an iron mask. He suffered in silence, spied in silence, and loved in silence. Only Albus Dumbledore knew the truth behind his loyalty. To everyone else, including Harry, Snape was an enigma, a man of shifting allegiances and cruel words, but beneath the surface he was performing the most dangerous task of all. He was protecting a promise, a memory, and a child. As Dumbledore once told Harry, "You are protected, in short, by your ability to love, the only protection that can possibly work against the lure of power like Voldemort's." Snape's silence was an act of love, a fierce, painful, and enduring kind. Even in his death, Snape preserved the integrity of his secrets. When Harry retrieved the silvery threads from the pensieve, it was only then that the truth poured forth, the bitter truth, the beautiful truth. "Look at me!" Snape's final words were not an accident. In those last moments, with his life slipping away, he didn't explain, he didn't confess. He just asked to see Lily's eyes one last time, trusting Harry to find the truth after he was gone. What kind of strength does it take to die with your secrets intact? What kind of discipline? Compare this to other houses and the difference becomes stark. Gryffindors value honesty and courage, but that often translates into impulsive speech, emotional outbursts, and unnecessary risks. Ron Weasley, in his loyalty to Harry, frequently said too much or reacted too quickly. Ravenclaws, lovers of knowledge, sometimes feel compelled to share everything they learn. Luna Lovegood, though wise, never understood the necessity of discretion. Hufflepuffs, with their kindness and openness, rarely question whether silence might be safer than truth. Only Slytherins instinctively understand that words, once spoken, cannot be returned, and that sometimes the unspoken truth is the only protection one has. Tom Riddle also understood the value of secrecy, though he used it to devastating effect. As a student, he charmed his professors and peers, hiding his darkness behind a mask of brilliance and ambition. When he opened the Chamber of Secrets, no one suspected him. Even Dumbledore could not see through the layers of charm and calculation. His diary, hidden away and enchanted to preserve his memory, was a secret weapon designed to outlast his physical death. Riddle's success in spreading fear and chaos came not from brute force alone, but from manipulation, strategy, and silence. Every lie he told relied on 100 truths he chose not to reveal. And yet, secrecy is not always sinister. When used with integrity, it can serve a higher purpose. Narcissa Malfoy's decision to lie to Voldemort about Harry's death is a perfect example. She had every reason to report the truth, yet in a single moment, with her son's life hanging in the balance, she made a choice that changed the course of history. She bent over Harry, whispered, "Is Draco alive?" And when he confirmed it, she turned to Voldemort and said, "He is dead." That lie, rooted not in ambition but in maternal love, allowed Harry to return to the castle and ultimately defeat Voldemort. Would a Gryffindor have lied? Would a Ravenclaw have risked it? Only a Slytherin could understand that sometimes deception can be the truest form of loyalty. The Black family, with its tangled web of allegiances and betrayals, offers another window into this trait. Regulus Black, once a Death Eater, turned against Voldemort after learning the truth about the Horcruxes. He did not proclaim his change of heart. He did not ask for help. He simply acted, bravely, silently. He replaced the locket in the cave with a decoy, wrote a farewell letter to Voldemort, and died alone. Even Creature, his loyal elf, kept that secret until the very end. Regulus never sought glory. He didn't even live long enough for redemption. But in his quiet rebellion, he proved that silence can also be sacrifice. Slytherins are often accused of selfishness, but the best among them are the opposite. They are protectors. They take responsibility for knowledge that others cannot handle. They carry burdens others don't even realize exist. This is what makes them formidable, not just in battle, but in life. They are the keepers of oaths, the guardians of truth. And when the time comes, they do not flinch, they do not boast, they simply act. Number 16, adaptability. Of all the qualities that set the 4 Hogwarts houses apart, few are as misunderstood and as undervalued as Slytherin's gift for adaptability. To the outsider, Slytherins are often painted with a singular brush, ambitious, cunning, and dangerous. But nestled deep within these generalizations lies a trait that, if embraced by students of any house, could change the course of their lives. Adaptability. The quiet power to evolve, to change course, to shed one skin and grow another, to survive when others falter. It is not about betrayal of principles, but about recognizing when transformation is necessary for survival, or even for redemption. Take Draco Malfoy. For much of the series, he is seen as the embodiment of everything wrong with Slytherin House, arrogant, prejudiced, and cruel in his insecurity. But look closely and something begins to shift in him. By the time we reach the final installment of the series, Draco is no longer sneering in hallways or plotting with fellow Death Eaters. He is withdrawn, uncertain, and frightened, not just of Voldemort, but of the path he is walking. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Draco spends most of the book wrestling with the impossible task of killing Dumbledore. He is not proud, not bold, he is haunted. He breaks down in the bathroom, pale and scared-looking as Harry observes, and even when cornered, Draco cannot complete the task. It's not cowardice. It's transformation. A boy trained to follow has begun to question, to reassess. Years later, we meet Draco as a father. In The Cursed Child, he is quiet, protective, and deeply aware of his past. He no longer speaks with certainty, no longer places family legacy above his son's well-being. He confesses his isolation during his school years and admits that what he truly wanted was a friend. "I had no one," he tells Harry, a simple statement that encapsulates decades of reflection. This is Slytherin adaptability at its finest, not used to deceive, but to evolve. Draco's change is not the flashiest, but it is among the most profound. He learns from pain, from loss, and he alters his course for the sake of Scorpius. Consider also Severus Snape, whose entire life was a study in transformation. From a lonely half-blood obsessed with the dark arts to a double agent willing to die for the son of the woman he loved, Snape's journey is riddled with moral ambiguity. But throughout, one constant remains: his ability to shift, to read the winds of change and reorient himself toward a new goal, even when that path is brutal. He tells Dumbledore in the Deathly Hallows, "You have kept him alive so that he can die at the right moment," and then agrees to keep working toward that end. This is not cold logic. This is a man who understands that the world demands terrible choices and that to serve a greater purpose, one must often wear masks. His adaptability is not glamorous, but it saves lives. Even Horace Slughorn, that jolly collector of talented students, demonstrates the subtle art of Slytherin flexibility. Slughorn avoids conflict when he can, but he also knows when to act. He may hide during the first rise of Voldemort, but during the Battle of Hogwarts he returns, dueling side by side with McGonagall and Kingsley. And he was fighting like a man possessed, the book tells us. For a man who had once tried so hard to remain neutral, this is a powerful transformation. He reads the moment and shifts, understanding that some fights must be faced. It's not that Slughorn lacked bravery, it's that his bravery required the right conditions to be seen. Adaptability isn't about being a chameleon for shallow gain. It's about reading the world clearly, understanding that change is inevitable, and choosing to evolve instead of breaking. Hermione Granger, though a Gryffindor, could have used a touch more of this trait early in the series. Her belief in rules was unshakable, even when they clearly didn't serve justice. It took her time to understand that not every problem is solved by quoting Hogwarts, a history. But when she finally allows herself to bend, like founding Dumbledore's army or tampering with school rules, her true brilliance shines. In that sense, Hermione becomes an honorary Slytherin in spirit, unwilling to be boxed in by one way of thinking. Harry himself, perhaps the most Gryffindor of them all, benefits deeply when he learns to adapt. During the Triwizard Tournament, he realizes that brute strength and courage are not enough. He must think creatively, learn spells beyond his comfort zone, and cooperate with unexpected allies. In Goblet of Fire, when he saves Fleur's sister in the lake, despite it not being part of the task, he shows that he can rethink the game's rules on the fly. This isn't just bravery, this is adaptability, and it earns him not only moral victory but the respect of his competitors and the judges. The world of magic is constantly shifting. The Ministry of Magic falls to corruption. Professors betray students. Allies become enemies. In such a world, rigid thinking is a liability. The ability to pivot, to revise one's plan, to survive and grow despite chaos, that is the strength Slytherins offer. Luna Lovegood, though a Ravenclaw, displays similar flexibility. She may believe in Nargles and other oddities, but when battle arrives, she does not hesitate. She adapts, she learns, she is never confined by her quirks. In fact, her flexibility makes her a formidable member of Dumbledore's army. Adaptability also means knowing when to retreat, when to stay silent, when to wait. Not every hero charges forward with a drawn wand. Some, like Regulus Black, take a quieter road. Raised in a family steeped in blood purity ideology, Regulus at first follows Voldemort. But when he learns the truth about the Horcruxes and the Dark Lord's disregard for life, even the life of a house elf, Regulus acts. He leaves behind a message and a plan, sacrificing himself not for glory but for correction. It's a final act of evolution, from blind follower to quiet resistor. He read the truth and chose to change. There's immense courage in that kind of change, to realize that you were wrong, to bear the weight of your past and still decide to walk a new path. Peter Pettigrew is the tragic mirror of this lesson. A Gryffindor by house, He lacks the flexibility that could have redeemed him. Trapped between fear and loyalty, Peter never reinvents himself. He simply hides. Even when he has the chance to defy Voldemort, his hesitation costs him his life. In Deathly Hallows, the magical hand Voldemort gave him strangles him when he shows mercy. He wavers too late. His inability to adapt, truly adapt, not just survive, seals his fate. Contrast that with Narcissa Malfoy. In Deathly Hallows, as Voldemort demands confirmation of Harry's death, Narcissa leans down, whispers to Harry, and asks the only question that matters to her. Is Draco alive? When Harry nods, she lies. He is dead. In that moment, her allegiance isn't to Voldemort, nor to ideology. It's to her son. She adapts, not to save herself, but to protect Draco. Her entire character, once a symbol of haughty Slytherin elitism, becomes the very embodiment of maternal defiance, and she walks away from the war with her family intact. Even Albus Dumbledore, revered and beloved, recognized the necessity of this Slytherin trait. He often warned against rigidity. He valued curiosity, transformation, the idea that people could evolve. His trust in Snape was not blind. It was born from recognizing that change is real and that people, given the right push, can abandon darkness. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and, above all, those who live without love, he said. And love, above all, requires adaptability. To love is to grow alongside someone, to learn from mistakes, to offer forgiveness when warranted. In many ways, Slytherin adaptability is a kind of magic all its own. It's the magic of becoming. Not the transformations taught by McGonagall, but deeper ones, moral, emotional, intellectual. It's the ability to realize you don't have to be the person the world expects. You can be more, or less, or simply different. You can step away from the path, take another, and still matter. This is why Slytherin's legacy should not be fear, it should be reverence. Imagine if this mindset were cultivated across all houses. If Ravenclaws saw their knowledge not as static truth, but as living wisdom, ever-changing. If Hufflepuffs understood loyalty not as blind faith, but as evolving trust. If Gryffindors recognized that bravery sometimes means yielding, reassessing, and altering course. The strength of Hogwarts has always been in its diversity, in the clash and dance of its four houses. But beneath that diversity lies a common need, to grow. Slytherins, at their best, show us that survival is not enough, that becoming better requires letting go of who we were, that sometimes the most powerful magic is not cast with a wand, but with a decision, to adapt, to endure, and in time to flourish. Number 18. Charisma. Charisma in Slytherin students is a trait not often celebrated, but deeply woven into their nature, a quiet power that simmers rather than explodes. Unlike Gryffindor's boldness or Ravenclaw's sharp wit, the Slytherin charisma is controlled, deliberate, and strategic. It is not the kind that draws a crowd for the sake of applause, but the kind that persuades a room to follow. In the shadowed halls of Hogwarts, where alliances are formed as quickly as rivalries and reputations can shape destiny, the subtle magnetism of Slytherins gives them a unique advantage. A student who can master this art, no matter their house, possesses a key to navigating not just school politics, but life itself. Take Horace Slughorn, a Slytherin who defies the stereotype of the cold and ruthless serpent. His charisma is gentle, wrapped in politeness and sweetened by flattery, yet it is undeniably effective. Slughorn doesn't force loyalty or demand attention, he simply attracts it, like gravity. He remembers names, favorite desserts, and lineage. It's a performance with purpose, and one that yields power. The Slug Club is a testament to that charisma, gathering promising students from all houses, Harry, Hermione, even Neville, into a private circle where influence brews over crystallized pineapple and fine wines. Slughorn's social intuition allows him to bind others through charm and opportunity, rather than fear or brute strength. Charisma, when used poorly, becomes manipulation. When used well, it becomes leadership. Slytherins understand this duality. They know that the ability to command attention is as essential as casting a spell. Tom Riddle knew it too well. His charisma was dangerous because it was flawless. People trusted him because he made them want to. Dumbledore described him as polite, charming and clever, more charming than most. His words held weight not because of volume, but because of calculated silence, gaze and tone. Riddle didn't just speak. He ensnared. Students listened, professors admired. Even Slughorn, seasoned in human nature, faltered in front of his talent. It took years before anyone dared question what lay behind that perfect facade. It is easy to dismiss charisma as superficial. Yet in Hogwarts it is a tool sharper than a wand. In the chaos of duels and exams, of Yule Balls and Triwizard tournaments, the students who rise to the top are often not the most brilliant, nor the most courageous, but those who understand people. Consider Draco Malfoy, often cruel, certainly flawed, but charismatic in his own right. He knew how to draw others in. His influence over Crabbe and Goyle was more than just shared prejudice. It was control sustained by a performative confidence. Draco walked through the castle like it was his inheritance. That self-assurance, however theatrical, made people pause. Charisma often looks like confidence, but it's more than that. It's knowing when to step forward and when to stay back. It's adjusting posture, tone, expression, all instinctively. Severus Snape, the most enigmatic of Slytherins, was not charismatic in the traditional sense, yet he wielded the room with the same magnetic force. His presence carried weight. Students fell silent not out of fear alone, but because he demanded a certain respect. There was something in his bearing, austere, composed, absolute, that communicated mastery. Even Dumbledore, in his quiet moments, spoke of Snape with reverence. He was the bravest man I ever knew, but he was also one of the most compelling. The Slytherin approach to charisma is not about being liked. It is about being seen and remembered. Their strength lies in the lasting impression. Slughorn's gentle charm remains with his guests long after dinner ends. Riddle's ghost haunts the memories of his classmates. Even Pansy Parkinson, often dismissed as a minor character, exhibited a force of personality that gathered others to her side. She knew when to laugh, when to flatter, when to sneer. While Gryffindors fought dragons, Pansy navigated social battlegrounds with similar courage and arguably equal consequence. This talent is not gifted, but cultivated. Slytherins pay attention. They observe. They mimic power until they master it. Charisma for them is a crafted performance, but that does not make it less authentic. It is simply intentional. In Hogwarts, where every interaction might shape a future career at the Ministry or a reputation among peers, this trait becomes invaluable. Hermione Granger, though a Gryffindor, eventually learned to wield charisma when necessary, and perhaps she learned it by observing Slughorn. She noticed how he listened, how he praised, how he maneuvered. In the Battle of Hogwarts, charisma mattered. Leadership emerged not just in commands, but in rallying courage. Kingsley Shacklebolt, though not a Slytherin, exhibited this quiet strength. He could enter a room and calm panic with a sentence. Slytherin charisma doesn't always mean admiration, but sometimes it means composure. It means being the calm in the storm, the one whose words slice through chaos like a spell. That is a lesson students from any house could benefit from. Charisma is not noise, but signal. Harry himself began as a Gryffindor with no awareness of his own charisma, but over the years he learned. He studied how people followed Dumbledore, not because he was loud, but because his voice carried purpose. Harry's own speeches, each brief, sincere, quietly powerful, reflect a shift toward that Slytherin mastery. When he stood before Voldemort in the Great Hall, when he spoke not to gloat, but to tell the truth, that moment wasn't Gryffindor bravery alone. It was charisma earned through experience sharpened by adversity. Charisma allows students to navigate systems, to influence without overpowering. In the world of politics, diplomacy, and leadership, it becomes a currency more valuable than gold. The Ministry of Magic is filled with former Slytherins for a reason, whether corrupt or noble. They rise because they understand perception. Even Cornelius Fudge, incompetent as he may have been, survived far longer than expected because he could smile and deflect. He wasn't powerful, he was persuasive. There is also a deeply human element to charisma. It builds bridges, it wins trust. Slughorn's genuine fondness for his students, his willingness to shelter them, even to risk himself for them, that is not manipulation. That is the charisma of kindness, and it too holds power. When Harry returned to ask Slughorn for a memory, it was not force that persuaded him. It was the appeal to emotion, to loyalty. Harry said, "You'd cancel out anything you did by giving me the memory." And it worked. Not because of logic, but because of feeling, because of connection. The lessons of Slytherin charisma are not dark arts. They are arts of awareness, emotional intelligence, social mastery. In a school that teaches transfiguration and potions, perhaps the most magical transformation is learning how to shape one's presence. Charisma is the invisible cloak that wraps around the speaker and draws others close. For students who struggle with shyness or social friction, learning from Slytherins could be revolutionary. Charisma also teaches restraint. In duels, the best spell is the one not cast, if a word can win instead. In arguments, the most powerful moment is the pause before the answer. These are lessons Slytherins understand. Charisma gives them patience. It gives them strategy. Even when outnumbered, a Slytherin knows how to shift a conversation, to plant doubt, to twist momentum. It is not always honorable, but it is effective. The perception of charisma as manipulative is flawed. It can be manipulative, just as a wand can be used for dark purposes, but it is also a form of empathy. To understand how to influence others, one must understand how they feel, what they fear, what they hope. This kind of emotional literacy is something Hogwarts rarely teaches in the classroom, but the Slytherin common room, steeped in ambition and subtlety, fosters it naturally. Even in humour, charisma plays a role. Blaise Zabini, rarely at the centre of plot, is noted for his elegant aloofness, admired, envied, never ignored. His quiet superiority is a form of passive charisma. He does not chase the spotlight. He makes the spotlight chase him. There is confidence in silence. There is power in simply being unimpressed. In real life, outside the fictional walls of Hogwarts, charisma opens doors. Job interviews, friendships, negotiations, debates. Every student, no matter their house, benefits from learning how to express themselves with poise, with presence. That is the enduring value of Slytherin charisma. It transcends cunning, it becomes connection. If there is one trait that binds all great figures in the wizarding world, Dumbledore, McGonagall, Lupin, even Voldemort, it is the ability to make people listen. Not just hear, listen. And that is not bravery. That is not intelligence. That is not loyalty. That is charisma. The quiet fire that burns behind the eyes, that speaks without raising its voice, that makes people lean in. In a school built on the values of 4 founders, each house offers a gift. But Slytherin's gift, which the art of influence, is one often feared, often envied, rarely embraced. It is time to change that, because a student who learns to wield charisma like a well-made wand holds in their hand not just a spell, but a future. Number 19. Self-reliance. Of all the traits associated with Slytherins, ambition, cunning, resourcefulness, one stands out as profoundly underrated and universally valuable: self-sufficiency. It is a quality that blooms early in the hearts of many young witches and wizards sorted into Slytherin. Often raised in families where strength is synonymous with emotional restraint and independence is expected, Slytherin children grow up learning not to cry for help, not to lean too heavily on others, and certainly not to display vulnerability. For them, weakness is a private affair, rarely acknowledged and never rewarded. This hard schooling fosters a deep-rooted self-reliance that becomes their compass in a world where alliances shift and power is often disguised in subtle forms. And while such a mindset can appear cold or unyielding, it also breeds an inner resilience that is essential not only in battle but in the far more complex wars waged within the mind. Nowhere is this trait more vividly displayed than in the 6th installment of the series, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where the reader is offered a rare, intimate look into the life of Draco Malfoy. No longer the peacocking boy with a constant entourage and smug laughter, Draco is suddenly isolated, fragile under the weight of a task that no child, regardless of blood or heritage, should be burdened with. Yet he takes it on. Not with public displays of anguish or whispered confessions to his peers, but with quiet, relentless determination. It is a tragic form of bravery, one shaped not by the Gryffindor's flair for noble risk, but by a quieter creed: survive, and survive alone. Malfoy's mission is clear, though its path is anything but. Tasked by Voldemort himself to murder Albus Dumbledore, Draco shoulders a responsibility so immense it would shatter most 16-year-olds. Yet he tells no one. He does not confide in his father Lucius, who by that point has fallen from favour and languishes in Azkaban. He avoids Snape, though the professor clearly senses his torment. He does not turn to the other Death Eaters, nor does he seek alliance with his Slytherin housemates. Instead, he works alone, methodically, relentlessly, often to the point of physical and emotional collapse. The bathroom scene, one of the most emotionally charged moments in the entire book, exposes the fracture behind Draco's armour. Harry stumbles upon him at his most vulnerable, crying, bent over a sink, his face ghostly pale, a mirror to the storm brewing inside. He was not crying exactly, but the hollows under his eyes were great shadows, and there was a red tinge to them, as though he had not slept in several nights. Yet even in this moment, when the weight becomes almost unbearable, Draco does not call for help. He wipes his face, steels himself, and continues with his plan. The boy who once mocked others for their weakness now bears his own pain in silence. Draco's self-sufficiency is not the heroic variety praised in storybooks. It is not gilded with applause or wrapped in noble cause. It is born of desperation and fear, of a family tradition that equates control with dignity. Still, it is a form of strength. While Gryffindors might rally allies and Hufflepuffs seek communal safety, Draco carries the burden of life and death decisions in solitude. His methods may be flawed, even reprehensible at times, but the stamina it takes to persist under such pressure is undeniably admirable. The vanishing cabinet becomes his obsession, his lifeline. He studies it in secret, tests it at great risk, and gradually learns to restore its magic. There is no instruction manual for the kind of task he undertakes. It is not a school assignment, it is a trap that could collapse on him at any moment. Still, he endures. I have to do this, he tells himself again and again. Though the reader never hears the exact words, the sentiment is etched into every sleepless night and every half-formed plan he crafts. He believes that asking for help would be a failure, a weakness the Dark Lord would punish without mercy. It is easy to vilify Draco, and indeed the earlier books paint him with a brush of arrogance and cruelty. But by the 6th book he emerges as something more nuanced, a product of his environment, yes, but also a young man grappling with the limits of his own strength. His self-sufficiency, ingrained from childhood, becomes both his salvation and his torment. In trying to protect his family and his own life, he withdraws deeper into himself, building walls even the most seasoned legilimens would struggle to break. And that is the essence of this Slytherin trait, the fortress of the self. It is a quality that does not depend on the house crest you wear. Ravenclaws could benefit from it when intellect fails to provide comfort. Gryffindors, often swept up in collective bravery, might find steadier footing with a dose of inward reliance, and Hufflepuffs, generous to a fault, might grow stronger if taught to find strength without waiting for validation. Self-sufficiency is not the rejection of community, but the acknowledgement that sometimes no one is coming to save you, and in those moments you must be enough. Take the example of Hermione Granger, brilliant, driven, fiercely independent. Though a Gryffindor, her reliance on herself echoes the Slytherin mold. She crafts the plan for the Polyjuice potion in Chamber of Secrets, researches Horcruxes in Deathly Hallows, and often prepares for danger long before others sense its presence. But even Hermione, for all her readiness, occasionally leans too hard on logic or the support of friends. Draco, in contrast, is thrust into a world where even trust is dangerous, and so he learns to navigate without it. The final confrontation atop the astronomy tower reveals the full measure of Draco's inner conflict. When he disarms Dumbledore, there is no glee, no triumphant speech. He hesitates. His wand hand trembles. "Draco, Draco, you are not a killer," Dumbledore tells him. And for a moment the reader sees a boy who does not want to be the monster the world expects. Still, he made it this far. He alone breached the castle's defences. He alone carried the plan through. He stands there not as a pawn, but as a symbol of the kind of tenacity that does not yield to fear or failure. Whether or not he ultimately pulls the trigger is beside the point. He came close, and he did it alone. This kind of self-possession is not easy to teach. It cannot be assigned as homework or discussed in a classroom debate. It is carved through experience, honed by silence, and sometimes sharpened by pain. That is why Slytherins often appear distant or aloof. It is not pride so much as armor. They are taught to hold themselves upright when the ground shakes, to solve problems with minimal fanfare, and to never reveal the full extent of their struggle. In a world full of shouting, their silence is often mistaken for absence, but make no mistake, they are very much present, and often 3 steps ahead. When Draco returns to Hogwarts in the Deathly Hallows, his posture has changed. There is no trace of the boy who mocked Harry in corridors. He walks with the weariness of someone who has already faced life's cruelest lesson, that you may suffer for the sake of others, and that no one will always be there to save you. Even as his parents waver, trying to survive in Voldemort's collapsing court, Draco no longer postures. He watches, he calculates, he endures. And once again, he says little. That too is self-sufficiency, not just acting alone, but surviving the aftermath with minimal destruction. For all the catastrophic choices he made, Draco is not broken. He is not a madman, nor a sycophant. He is damaged, yes, but intact. That is more than can be said for many others who faced less and still crumbled. His story is one of internal strength misdirected, yet potent all the same. In many ways, self-sufficiency is the backbone of the wizarding world. It is what allows Harry to walk into the forest, what keeps Snape walking a double path, and what lets Narcissa lie to Voldemort's face to save her son. The Malfoys, so often painted as villains, are masters of this art. Even in disgrace they maneuver, even in fear they endure. Draco's childhood was steeped in this ethos. And by the time the series ends, it is the one part of his heritage he cannot abandon. This trait, so often dismissed as arrogance or coldness, would serve students of every house, not in place of friendship or courage, but alongside them. For what is bravery without a foundation? What is loyalty if it crumbles at the first test? Self-sufficiency is the root system that anchors all other values. It is what makes a student stand tall when the crowd thins, what makes a wizard rise again after defeat, and what lets a person bear a secret so heavy it bends their spine but never quite breaks it. Slytherins do not ask for medals. Their victories are often private, known only to themselves. But in every quiet success, in every survival that no one applauds, there is a lesson worth learning. In Draco Malfoy's silence, in his sleepless nights and desperate plans, there is a strength more enduring than a moment of glory. It is the strength of one who chooses to carry his own weight, even when it is too much. And that is a strength every student, no matter the house, would do well to cultivate. Number 20, respect for authority. In the dim corridors of Hogwarts, where portraits whisper secrets and staircases shift with moods, one virtue glides silently beneath the noise of courage and brilliance: respect for authority. Slytherins have long been misunderstood, painted in strokes of ambition and cunning, but beneath their reputation lies a fundamental trait that deserves recognition. They understand power, not as something to be feared or blindly opposed, but as something to be studied, respected, and, when necessary, allied with. In a world where wizarding society balances delicately on old traditions and unspoken rules, this trait is more than just useful, it's essential. Unlike the daring Gryffindors who charge into the unknown, or the idealistic Ravenclaws who lose themselves in intellectual abstraction, Slytherins know the worth of existing systems. They analyze, interpret, and adapt. They don't rebel without a strategy. Even when they disagree with the rules, they approach change with calculation, not chaos. Draco Malfoy, despite his many faults, was not foolish. He understood the value of his family name, the influence of his father, and the importance of proximity to power. When Voldemort returned, he didn't leap into battle with idealism. He calculated, retreated, and survived. While his decisions cannot always be defended, his methods speak volumes about his awareness of structure and survival. In the Department of Mysteries, when Harry dragged his friends into the heart of danger, he did so driven by righteous fury, not prudence. A Slytherin would have hesitated, not out of cowardice, but from an understanding of consequence. When Hermione Granger warned Harry not to act on the vision of Sirius's capture, her advice echoed the kind of caution that Slytherins would naturally employ. Hermione, a Gryffindor, displayed a rare moment of Slytherin sensibility. She respected the established protocols, the adult's authority, and the risk of miscalculation. It was a moment that might have spared them all had it been heeded. Slytherins know how to navigate corridors of influence, whether in the Ministry of Magic or at the dinner table of a pure-blood family. Horace Slughorn, with his velvet waistcoats and indulgent desserts, was no fool. He cultivated relationships with those in power, not out of sycophancy, but from a clear understanding of how influence operates. He hosted his Slug Club not for amusement, but to bind future leaders to his circle. His students were not just favourites, they were potential ministers, Quidditch stars, and innovators. Slughorn's entire career was built on the delicate dance of deference and charm, and it served him well. His survival during both wizarding wars was no accident. This respect for hierarchy is not submission. It is strategy. Severus Snape bowed to no one emotionally, but he understood the necessity of masks. He became a double agent not by brute force, but by carefully manipulating the very structures others tried to topple. His strength came not from open rebellion, but from endurance, silence, and the ability to play a long game. He respected Dumbledore's authority, even when he disagreed, because he knew the headmaster's reach extended beyond the walls of Hogwarts. When McGonagall doubted him, when students cursed his name, Snape endured it all, not for glory, but because he knew where the real power lay and how to serve it for a greater end. Even within the hallowed halls of Hogwarts, power isn't evenly distributed. The head of house, the prefects, the headmaster, all form a chain of command. Slytherins learn early how to function within this system. They know how to curry favour without grovelling, how to speak with reverence, and how to stand still when others charge forward. Blaise Zabini may not have been a hero, but he never found himself in detention for recklessness. He observed more than he spoke, calculated before he acted, and never wasted energy on empty gestures. This is not the absence of spirit, it's the presence of control. In the Triwizard Tournament, it was Cedric Diggory, the epitome of Hufflepuff virtue, who relied on fairness and honour. Yet had he possessed even a trace of Slytherin's cautious respect for the system, he might have sensed the trap. He trusted too much, followed the rules too blindly, and died not for lack of courage, but for lack of suspicion. A Slytherin would have questioned, would have delayed, would have survived. The respect for authority also extends to understanding lineage, alliances, and history. In Wizarding Britain, names like Black, Lestrange, and Malfoy open doors. But it's not just about birthright, it's about how one uses that name. Narcissa Malfoy, in defiance of Voldemort's direct authority, lied to his face, not out of rebellion, but maternal strategy. She respected power, yes, but she knew when to manipulate it. Her ability to read the moment, to understand that preserving her family required subtle treachery, is the mark of someone who reveres systems without becoming enslaved by them. Even Tom Riddle, before he became Voldemort, was a master of institutional navigation. He rose through the ranks at Hogwarts not by challenging authority, but by charming it. Professor Slughorn adored him. Tippett saw promise. Riddle manipulated their affection, not because he believed in their values, but because he respected what they represented. Access. He understood early that to change the world, one must first master its rules. In contrast, Harry's frequent skirmishes with authority, his detentions, his refusal to listen, his outbursts, often placed him at a disadvantage. Dolores Umbridge was a tyrant, but her rise to power was not irrational. She understood bureaucracy. She exploited loopholes. And while her ethics were deplorable, her strategy was Slytherin in design. The students who merely defied her suffered. The ones who worked around her, like Fred and George with their controlled chaos, succeeded by understanding how to undermine power from within. When the Carrows took over Hogwarts during the final year of the war, students who blindly resisted were tortured. Those who survived learned to disguise their contempt. Slytherins have always excelled at disguise, not as a form of cowardice, but as a survival skill. In the face of tyranny, open defiance isn't always bravery. Sometimes it's suicide. The respect for authority means understanding when to kneel so you can rise again later. Regulus Black exemplified this in his final days. Raised in a household where loyalty to Voldemort was gospel, he did not rebel outwardly. Instead, he played the part, gained trust, and, at great cost, orchestrated the theft of one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. His death was not public, not grand, but it was sacrificial. He operated within the system until he could strike from inside. A Gryffindor might have shouted, challenged, and died in the open. Regulus chose a different path, quiet, strategic, and effective. In the politics of the wizarding world, nothing is ever simple. Whether in Wizengamot sessions or international confederation debates, those who understand protocol prevail. Kingsley Shacklebolt did not rise to Minister of Magic by being loud. He listened, he worked inside the system. Though a former Auror, he was never reckless. His methods, smooth, deliberate, and balanced, mirror the Slytherin understanding of power. Even if he wore a different house crest, his mind worked with Slytherin clarity. It is a misconception that respect for authority equates to blind obedience. In Slytherin minds, it's a chessboard, not a cage. They ask, who holds the power? What do they value? How do I position myself? It's not about subservience, it's about foresight. In a world where laws shift with ministers and allegiances bend like willow wands, survival depends not on strength, but on reading the winds of power. When Dumbledore appointed Snape as headmaster, many saw betrayal. But what the Order needed was a man inside. A Gryffindor might have balked at the symbolism, but a Slytherin saw the necessity. Snape respected Dumbledore's final plan and held his post not for glory, but as part of a strategy that required patience, not passion. It's this kind of trust in a larger structure that makes Slytherins powerful allies in times of chaos. Even in day-to-day life at Hogwarts, Slytherins are observant. They know which professors favor discipline, which value curiosity, and how to address each. They don't seek to please everyone, but they tailor their approaches. It's why so many of them gain favors, opportunities, and leniencies others miss. Not because they're dishonest, but because they respect the roles people play. In a school built on legacy and tradition, knowing the players is half the game. There is a reason why many Slytherins go on to hold influential positions in the ministry. They're not just ambitious, they're tactful. They understand meetings, alliances, and unspoken rules. Pansy Parkinson may not have fought in the final battle, but she knew how to leverage social circles. She wasn't a hero, but she was a survivor. That in itself is a kind of wisdom. During the Battle of Hogwarts, while many Slytherins fled, others, like Slughorn, returned to fight. He did so not in blind loyalty to Dumbledore, but because he recognized the shift in power and chose the side with moral and strategic weight. Even in war, he knew which authority deserved allegiance. That ability to choose, based on assessment, not emotion, is a skill too few students are taught. Not every student needs to become a political manipulator, but all would benefit from learning what Slytherins inherently understand. Systems matter. Whether you're organizing a Dumbledore's army meeting or applying for a ministry internship, knowing how to work with authority, not just around it, can determine success or failure. Gryffindor bravery builds the wave. Slytherin foresight decides where it breaks. In the end, the House of Serpents offers more than ambition and guile. It offers perspective. In a world where dragons sleep beneath vaults and history lives in portraits, nothing is ever what it seems. Respecting the structure does not make you less free. It makes you wise enough to survive and one day lead. Number 21. Resourcefulness. Of all the traits associated with Slytherin House, ambition, cunning, resourcefulness, one of the most underestimated yet profoundly powerful is their instinct to use resources wisely. Unlike the reckless bravery of Gryffindor or the scattered enthusiasm of Hufflepuff, Slytherins are not prone to waste. They assess, calculate, and ask one essential question: what do I have and how can I use it to its full potential? This perspective, often mistaken for manipulation, is actually a sophisticated form of strategic thinking. It is not merely about gaining power, but about investing effort, attention, and relationships where they will bear fruit. Take, for instance, Professor Horace Slughorn, a man who embodies this Slytherin quality to perfection. When reintroduced in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Slughorn is not portrayed as malevolent or dangerous. Instead, he is affable, charming, and oddly paternal. Yet behind his twinkling eyes lies a master tactician. He has built what can only be described as an elite inner circle of protégés. He calls them the Slug Club, and although its gatherings are polite and festive on the surface, what he has constructed is far more enduring, a personal network of powerful individuals who owe him, not out of obligation, but from genuine fondness and appreciation. Slughorn knew, perhaps more than any other professor at Hogwarts, how to turn relationships into mutually beneficial alliances. One might think this trait veers into self-serving behavior, but Slughorn never exploited his students. He saw potential, nurtured it, and ensured they succeeded. In return, they remembered him, cherished him even. "You are talented, you are clever," he tells Tom Riddle in a memory preserved in the Pensieve. "You will go far." Even when he unwittingly played a role in Riddle's dark journey, his intentions were rooted not in greed or domination, but in the genuine belief that recognizing and supporting talent was a virtue. He gave and he received, he invested and he harvested. Slughorn's resourcefulness went beyond just students. He carefully maintained his comforts during retirement, even as he attempted to avoid detection from Death Eaters. Transfiguring a Muggle house into a state of feigned disrepair, he turned it into a fortress of illusion. This was not raw magical power, it was the intelligent use of knowledge and environment. Slytherins do not waste their strength when a trick of the mind or a well-placed connection can yield the same, if not better, results. Even his decision to return to Hogwarts under Dumbledore's request wasn't impulsive. Slughorn knew that returning to the castle was both a risk and an opportunity. He weighed the cost and decided the potential gain outweighed the fear. For a man who once taught Voldemort, returning meant facing ghosts. but it also meant returning to the heart of the wizarding world, where he could again cultivate influence and remain protected by the school's formidable enchantments. Slughorn's mind never stopped weighing value against expenditure. In a school that celebrates heroism, loyalty, and wit, strategic resource management is often forgotten. But how many wars are won with blind courage alone? How many problems are solved by loyalty without a plan? Slytherin's wisdom lies in efficiency. When Severus Snape hoarded his occlumency skills, his double-agent status, and his mastery of subtlety, he did so not to gloat, but to ensure that every piece on the chessboard remained in place until the moment of checkmate. Snape is another example of Slytherin's relationship with resources, though a darker one. Every action he took was calculated. He invested decades in gaining Voldemort's trust, all while serving Dumbledore's secret plan. He exploited his position, used his bitter reputation to shield his true loyalties, and even sacrificed his own life to protect a secret so vital it could change the course of history. As Dumbledore once said, "You alone know whether it will harm your cause to appear to work for me." Snape was not rash, he was not emotional, he was strategic, and that strategy saved lives. The same could be said, in a more innocuous way, about Draco Malfoy. While often portrayed as a spoiled bully, Draco understood the importance of family name, of inherited influence. When charged with the impossible task of killing Dumbledore, he did not rush into battle. Instead, he tried every trick, every device available to him: the vanishing cabinet, cursed artifacts, poisoned mead. Not because he was cowardly, but because he instinctively knew he couldn't succeed by brute force. His Slytherin instincts told him to think, to plan, to use what he had before making his move. Even in his hesitation, Draco's resourcefulness shone through. He was acutely aware that power alone would not save his family. What he needed was leverage, secrecy, and careful navigation of a world ruled by terror. His failure wasn't for lack of trying. It was a reminder that even the most well-laid plans can falter, but the effort to use resources rather than force is a lesson many could benefit from learning. Contrast this with the typical Gryffindor approach: heroic, noble, often impetuous. Harry himself ran headfirst into danger countless times. But when did Harry succeed most decisively? When he borrowed a page from the Slytherin playbook. The most successful moment in his entire journey, retrieving the memory from Slughorn, was not accomplished by bravery alone. It required understanding Slughorn's psychology, crafting the right moment, offering the right words. He didn't overpower Slughorn, he persuaded him. He turned a resource into a turning point. "Be brave like my mother," he said, and Slughorn gave up the memory that revealed the final Horcruxes. Even Hermione, the brightest witch of her age, had to learn this skill over time. Initially, she relied on rule-following and encyclopedic knowledge. But during the hunt for the Horcruxes, she began to think more like a Slytherin, conserving energy, using concealment charms, and strategizing their movements. It wasn't just about knowing the answer, it was about applying knowledge like a weapon. And what of the most iconic Slytherin traitor of all time, Regulus Black? Raised in a pure-blood fanatic household, he might have followed Voldemort blindly, but when faced with the truth about the Horcruxes, he turned, not by announcing rebellion, not by fighting, but by slipping away, stealing the locket, and dying in quiet resistance. His method was not glorious, but it was effective. He used what he had, his position, his knowledge, his house-elf creature, to make a difference. And no one knew, for years, this capacity to see value where others see waste, to understand that every connection, every tool, every whisper of knowledge can become a shield or a sword, is something worth teaching. Ravenclaws may prize intellect, but strategy is more than intelligence. It is application. Hufflepuffs value hard work, but labor without direction often leads to burnout. Gryffindors fight valiantly, but victory belongs not to the brave alone, but to the prepared. In the Battle of Hogwarts, this became evident. It wasn't just the DA or the Order of the Phoenix that turned the tide. It was the secret passageways Neville used. It was Aberforth's help. It was the alliances forged over years, students who had been quietly observing, preparing, resisting in small but powerful ways. Slytherin wisdom was present, even if unacknowledged. Pansy Parkinson's moment of weakness aside, not every Slytherin abandoned the cause. Some used their silence as resistance. Some used their neutrality to protect others. Not everyone fights with a wand. And that is the essence of this trait, knowing that not every battle is won through confrontation. And sometimes winning is about knowing the right person, having the right tool, saying the right thing at the right moment. This is what Slytherins learn from the moment the sorting hat touches their head. They do not hoard, they harvest. They do not panic, they prepare. They do not yell, they wait. And when the time comes, they act with precision. Even in smaller, everyday examples, this wisdom shows. When Blaise Zabini remained aloof and watchful, when Daphne Greengrass kept her alliances quiet, when Theodore Nott buried himself in ancient magical texts, these were not acts of cowardice, but of preparation. These students were not wasting time, they were building something. Knowledge, leverage, protection. One day, perhaps, even redemption. It is a mistake to teach students only to charge, to persevere, to be kind. These are beautiful traits, but they are not complete without the ability to think several steps ahead, to conserve energy, to calculate the cost of a move before making it. Slytherins teach us that what you own, your time, your knowledge, your relationships, is a currency. And like all currency, it must be spent wisely. This trait doesn't require a dark heart or a cold ambition. It requires discipline, self-awareness, the humility to know you may not win by being louder or faster, but by being smarter. When students of all houses learn this, they become not just students, but architects of their own futures. They stop chasing and start directing. They stop hoping and start shaping. The world, after all, does not reward effort alone. It rewards impact, and impact, more often than not, comes from knowing how to use what's already in your hand, just as Slughorn used a dinner party, just as Snape used a reputation, just as Regulus used a locket. The Slytherins knew true power lies not in what you gain, but in what you already possess. Number 22, Composure. In the middle of a darkened corridor, footsteps echoed against the cold stone walls of Hogwarts. Death had just visited the astronomy tower, and Albus Dumbledore's body now lay broken on the ground below. Severus Snape, the man who had cast the fatal spell, turned to flee. But before vanishing into the night, he did something most forgot. He saved Harry Potter. With deadly precision, he deflected attacks, misdirected Death Eaters, and never once let the mask of his composure slip. That moment wasn't about bravery in the Gryffindor sense, nor about loyalty, nor even cunning alone. It was about control. Cold-blooded, precise, rational control, the kind only a Slytherin could master under such pressure. In the chaotic world of wizardry, where spells fly as fast as thoughts and danger can come from any shadow, there exists a quality too often misunderstood: calmness under fire. Slytherins, so frequently branded as schemers or cowards, often carry a hidden weapon: cold-bloodedness. This trait, forged in ambition but sharpened by discipline, gives them a unique edge. Where others falter in panic, a true Slytherin stands unmoved, assessing, planning, and reacting with lethal clarity. In a school, like Hogwarts, brimming with chaos and conflict, it is a skill as essential as any taught in charms or transfiguration. Draco Malfoy, for all his flaws, carried himself with a remarkable ability to conceal emotion when the stakes demanded it. After he was forced into the impossible task of killing Dumbledore, he did not scream, did not tremble before the headmaster. His wand hand may have been unsure, but his face remained pale and hard. "You're not a killer, Draco," Dumbledore told him, And yet Draco, pushed into Voldemort's circle, survived. He knew when to hold his tongue, when to feign loyalty, when to walk the line between fear and resolve. It wasn't bravery, it wasn't treachery, it was calculation and poise, cold-blooded survival, and in the end, it saved his family. The night the Battle of Hogwarts erupted, most students were engulfed in a whirlwind of emotion, rage, fear, grief. But not every house met the chaos the same way. While Gryffindors stood ready to fight, and Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws scrambled to take sides, the Slytherins made a different kind of decision. Many chose to leave, not from cowardice, but from a cool assessment of risk and outcome. The decision wasn't heroic, perhaps, but it was logical. As Professor McGonagall noted, "They are your classmates." But the Slytherins had seen enough. The battle was bigger than school rivalry, and they responded not with passion, but with icy resolve. Snape's mastery of cold-bloodedness did not begin with Dumbledore's death. Years earlier, when he stood before the Dark Lord, double-crossing the most dangerous wizard alive, he did so without so much as a twitch of fear. The books tell us he became Voldemort's most trusted servant, yet in truth he was Dumbledore's man. He fooled the best legilimens alive, he lied with elegance, he stared death in the face every day. "He's been a spy for us, working against Voldemort," Dumbledore said. "Only a person with absolute self-control could play such a long game. Gryffindors might have crumbled under guilt. Hufflepuffs could have balked at deception. Ravenclaws might have calculated odds but not followed through. Snape endured, because Snape was cold, because he was Slytherin." Cold-bloodedness isn't a lack of feeling. It's the ability to regulate those feelings when they threaten to overwhelm. Think of the Triwizard Tournament. During the second task, while others rushed, flailed, or let nerves ruin them, cunning minds prevailed. Harry, though brave, nearly failed without assistance. A Slytherin might not have hesitated. The waters were dark, the clock ticking, but panic would not have cracked their composure. They might not have saved others out of virtue, but their choices would have been calculated, effective, and calm. There is a strength in watching, in waiting, in saying nothing when words are dangerous. When Umbridge turned Hogwarts into a place of surveillance and punishment, not all students rebelled openly. Slytherins, whether aligned with her or not, knew when to speak and when to stay silent. That kind of restraint, infuriating to some, was in fact a survival strategy. Gryffindors carved Dumbledore's army into the room of requirement. Slytherins noted the tide and prepared for any outcome. Blaise Zabini, though a minor character, offers another portrait of this poise. He never flustered, never chased attention, never raised his voice. In a school full of egos and impulsive outbursts, he floated untouched, aloof, watching. He was not a hero, but he was not a fool either. When the castle shook and death came knocking, you can be sure Zabini didn't scream. He likely observed, measured, and moved. Even Horace Slughorn, as jovial as he was, exemplified this calm under fire. In the heat of Voldemort's rise, he faked his own death, hid himself, and survived. When drawn back to Hogwarts, he did not make speeches. He brewed, he taught, and when it mattered, he fought. "He's not brave like you are," Harry once thought of Slughorn. But bravery wears many faces. Slughorn's was tempered, careful, strategic. He joined the final fight only when he believed it mattered, and he did so with resolve. Hogwarts was not always a place of peace. The Chamber of Secrets brought paranoia and fear. While many students dissolved into gossip and hysteria, the Slytherins largely carried on. They had suspicions, yes. They wielded them, sometimes cruelly. But panic? That was not their way. Their stillness, even when rooted in superiority, was also a mark of discipline. While others froze in terror, Slytherins whispered, plotted, remained vigilant. That cold-blooded instinct allowed them to adapt to power shifts more quickly than anyone. When the Death Eaters finally seized Hogwarts during the 7th book, the school transformed into a prison. Torture became lesson, punishment became routine. And yet not every student crumbled. Some resisted outwardly, but others, likely Slytherins, resisted in quieter ways. They lived, they endured. And sometimes survival was the greatest act of defiance. These students did not shout slogans or throw spells. They memorized patrol schedules. They slipped notes. They waited for a chance. They didn't burn with rage. They played the long game. In the Forbidden Forest, Harry faced death with the courage of a lion. But it was Snape who had walked through fire in silence for years. "Look at me," Snape whispered with his last breath. His entire life had been built upon restraint, his every action calculated. And in those dying seconds his request was simple, not for forgiveness, not for justice, but to see Lily's eyes. Even in death he did not beg, he did not scream. He accepted his fate like a man who had already counted all the costs. If this world were fair, cold-bloodedness wouldn't be so necessary. But the wizarding world is not fair. It's a place of betrayal, prophecy, blood oaths, and broken trust. Those who panic die. Those who freeze make mistakes. Those who stay calm, who breathe through the fire and keep their minds sharp, they have a chance. That's what Slytherins offer. That's what every student should learn. Ron Weasley, though brave, often let his emotions cloud judgment. His jealousy, his fear, his temper, these were his weaknesses. Imagine if Ron had learned the Slytherin way. Imagine if, instead of storming off during the Horcrux hunt, he had stayed and observed, calculated, waited for his moment. Cold-bloodedness doesn't mean indifference. It means discipline in the face of chaos. Even Hermione, the smartest witch of her age, occasionally faltered in panic. Her brilliance was unquestionable, but under pressure she clung to structure and rules. A dose of Slytherin calm might have taught her when to bend the order of things, not in fear, but in strategy. Neville Longbottom blossomed into a hero, but not before many years of trembling. Early on, he shook at every confrontation, but what if he had been taught not just courage, but control, not just action, but timing? Cold-bloodedness could have shaped his bravery into something sharper. Every student, no matter their house, faces darkness, sometimes from outside, sometimes from within. The ability to remain calm, to act not from fear or passion, but from clarity, is invaluable. Slytherins cultivate that talent from youth. It is not always pretty, not always noble, but it is effective. And in a world where Death Eaters can infiltrate your school, where prophecies bind your future, and where love can kill as surely as hate, calmness is a kind of armor. Perhaps that is the final legacy of Slytherin. Not ambition, not cunning, not even resourcefulness, but the art of keeping one's head when the world burns. Not all heroes scream. Some of them whisper, some of them wait. And some, like Severus Snape, save the boy they loathed because it was the only way left to honor love, not through rage, not through tears, but with the steady hand of a man who mastered the cold within. Number 23. Persistence in negotiation. Of all the virtues found in the 4 Hogwarts houses, there is one cunning trait from Slytherin that often goes unnoticed in the loud celebration of Gryffindor bravery, Ravenclaw brilliance, and Hufflepuff loyalty, the art of patient negotiation. Slytherins do not rush to fight like Gryffindors, nor are they lost in theory like Ravenclaws or driven purely by group harmony like Hufflepuffs. Instead, they watch, they calculate. They prepare their words as carefully as they would a potion, and when the time comes to speak, they use language as a tool, not a weapon. Consider the infamous Lucius Malfoy. His name alone brings a chill to many in the wizarding world, but not because of raw power or brute violence. Lucius never charged into battle waving a wand. Instead, he chose his battlegrounds in offices, courtrooms, and private corridors of power. When he entered the Ministry of Magic, it was not with a roar, but with a whisper and a cane. He knew which hand to shake, which favor to offer, and precisely when to say nothing. That, in itself, is the purest form of Slytherin negotiation, silent influence. Lucius once managed to convince the ministry to place Buckbeak the Hippogriff on trial, Not because he had an airtight legal case, but because he used his connections, whispered in ears, and applied pressure not with fury, but with precision. It wasn't justice he was after, it was control. His technique exemplifies a kind of persuasion that doesn't break doors down but finds the key to every lock. "If you were any closer, Malfoy, we'd be holding hands," Sirius Black once said with disdain, not because Lucius threatened him directly, but because he had slithered too close to the seat of power. Even in school settings, where shouting often wins debates and magical skill dazzles professors, Slytherins understand something deeper. Success often comes not from what you say, but how you say it. In defense against the dark arts, a Gryffindor might rush to duel to prove a point. A Slytherin would instead question the lesson plan itself, argue for a strategic approach, and suggest alternatives. The student who speaks with calm clarity and whose words are wrapped in subtle intent can often outshine the loudest wand-slinger. Professor Slughorn himself was a Slytherin, and his entire teaching style revolved around polished diplomacy. He cultivated students not just based on grades, but on potential, charm, and usefulness. When he rejoined Hogwarts in Harry's 6th year, he didn't force connections, he coaxed them. Invitations to his slug club weren't shouted from rooftops, they came by owl post, handwritten and warm, yet always hiding a deeper purpose. Slughorn wasn't interested in friendship, he was curating influence, and he did so with grace and poise. This form of interaction, measured, strategic, and effective, could benefit any student in any house. In contrast, the Gryffindor tendency toward blunt honesty may seem noble but often leaves little room for compromise. Harry himself struggled with diplomacy. In Order of the Phoenix, during his outbursts with Professor Umbridge, he constantly lost points and credibility, not because he was wrong, but because he lacked subtlety. Slytherins would never have wasted their breath on angry retorts. They would have smiled, taken mental notes, and returned later with a carefully placed sentence that unravelled Umbridge's authority without drawing a wand. Even Hermione Granger, brilliant and meticulous as she was, lacked the Slytherin patience for dialogue in her early years. In Goblet of Fire, her campaign for house elf rights through SPEW was admirable but ineffective. She bulldozed her way through conversations, failed to listen to the very elves she claimed to help, and alienated even her friends. A Slytherin with her goals might have built alliances slowly, changed minds gently, and succeeded not with fire but with finesse. Take Draco Malfoy, not the playground bully we see in early books, but the boy who, by Half-Blood Prince, is carrying the burden of a mission he cannot complete. He doesn't scream, he negotiates. With Dumbledore on the astronomy tower, Draco does not strike. Instead, he speaks, he stalls, he wants another way, and his hesitations are laced with the Slytherin instinct to explore every possible path before committing to one. "You're not a killer, Draco," Dumbledore tells him, not because he lacks cruelty, but because he's too calculating for brute force. That same instinct for strategic communication appears in Severus Snape. While Gryffindors would call him cold and Hufflepuffs distant, Snape's every word was chosen with intent. When he stood before the Dark Lord or Albus Dumbledore or even a classroom full of students, Snape knew the value of silence. "You have your mother's eyes," he once said to Harry, not a phrase of comfort, but a reminder cloaked in layers, hiding truth behind sorrow. Snape negotiated every moment of his life, balancing identities and loyalties, using dialogue not to connect, but to survive. The ability to negotiate is not simply a political tool, it's an emotional one. A student struggling with their grades, caught between disappointment and ambition, could benefit from the Slytherin trait of measured persuasion. Speaking to a professor not with frustration or panic, but with respectful firmness, proposing a solution, asking for an opportunity, showing both humility and quiet confidence. This is where Slytherin wisdom shines. Even Neville Longbottom, one of the most underestimated Gryffindors, began to grow truly when he learned restraint. By Deathly Hallows, he wasn't just charging headfirst into battle. He was organizing, planning, gathering support. There's something inherently Slytherin in that evolution, not in motive, but in method. Neville's transformation shows that courage paired with strategy creates real power. Luna Lovegood, the dreamlike Ravenclaw, also possessed a subtle form of this Slytherin trait. She never argued directly, never raised her voice, but still managed to change minds. She listened, waited, and when she spoke, her words pierced gently, like a needle rather than a sword. She taught others to see without telling them what to believe. It was a negotiation of perspective, quiet yet profound. Slytherins also know when not to speak. Silence, after all, is not emptiness, it's space. Space to observe, to reflect, and to let others reveal their intentions. In the corridors of Hogwarts and the halls of the Ministry, saying nothing can sometimes speak louder than 1,000 impassioned words. Slytherins are masters of the pause, the moment when a question is asked, and they wait just long enough for the speaker to feel uncertain. Even Albus Dumbledore, wise and enigmatic, had traces of Slytherin cunning. He didn't manipulate in the way Lucius did, but he often withheld truth for strategic purposes. He negotiated with fate itself, allowing events to unfold until they reached the right moment. "I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth," he admitted to Harry, years too late. That's the shadowy edge of Slytherin influence. Truth used not always as a light, but sometimes as a mirror, angled just right. Ginny Weasley, often remembered for her fire, also exhibited Slytherin strength in negotiation, particularly in how she handled Harry. She never chased him. She never begged. She let her presence speak, held her ground and waited. Her quiet confidence, her ability to stand firm without shouting, was not a Gryffindor roar, but a Slytherin hum, calm, resonant, and undeniable. In academic life, too, this trait proves invaluable. During NEWT, preparation, when stress is high and competition fierce, the student who can calmly request extra resources, bargain for office hours, and present their case without desperation will succeed more often than the one who relies on panic or pressure. This is not about deceit, it's about poise, it's about presenting yourself not just as someone in need, but as someone worth investing in. When Harry walked into the Forbidden Forest to face Voldemort, it was Gryffindor bravery that led his steps, but it was Slytherin calculation that allowed him to do it without alerting others, without creating panic. He chose silence. He chose strategy. He made peace with death, not through noise, but through internal resolve, a kind of negotiation with destiny. There is a quiet magic in knowing how to speak and when, in choosing your words like a wand movement, precise, intentional, powerful. This is the essence of Slytherin negotiation, not just talking to win, but talking to open doors, not demanding respect, but drawing it in with soft gravity. For any Hogwarts student, whether wearing red, yellow, blue or green, the Slytherin skill of persistent, patient, and precise dialogue could elevate their education, their friendships, and their future. Because at the end of every debate, battle, or difficult conversation, the last voice remembered is rarely the loudest. It is the one that whispered at the right moment and left the room changed. Number 24, respect for tradition. In the shadowed dungeons beneath the grandeur of Hogwarts, the House of Slytherin keeps its secrets close. Its students walk with pride, their green and silver crests gleaming like echoes of an ancient oath. Among the many traits associated with Slytherins, ambition, cunning, resourcefulness, there is one that slips under the radar, too often dismissed as mere arrogance: their unwavering respect for tradition. This respect is not a stagnant worship of the past, but a deliberate recognition that every spell cast today rests upon centuries of knowledge and sacrifice. It is not about clinging to dust-covered relics, but about understanding that magic is a legacy, not just a tool. Other houses may value bravery, wit, or kindness, but there is a reason why Slytherins often excel in matters of preservation, be it ancient enchantments, family legacies, or the intricate rules of magical politics. To them, tradition is not a cage, but a compass. This reverence was evident in the way Draco Malfoy referred to his lineage. "The Malfoys have always been a pure-blood family," he once declared with an air of superiority. Yet beneath the arrogance lay something deeper, a fierce pride in identity, a refusal to forget the struggles and triumphs of his ancestors. This same trait could have guided Harry Potter in moments when he teetered between impulse and reflection. Too often, Gryffindors leap where others would listen. A Slytherin's respect for the past could have taught caution, not cowardice, but thoughtful planning rooted in history. Consider Harry's reckless entry into the Department of Mysteries. Had he been guided by a deeper sense of magical tradition, he might have thought twice before acting on visions, understanding that such powers like prophecy are wrapped in centuries of cryptic precedent. Even Hermione Granger, brilliant as she was, initially overlooked the depth of magical history. Her knowledge was wide, but it took time for her to respect the emotional and spiritual weight of ancient artifacts. When she helped destroy Helga Hufflepuff's cup, she understood only then that it was not just an object, it was a piece of a founder's soul, corrupted by another. A Slytherin might have approached the artifact not only with analytical caution, but with reverence, recognizing its historical power as well as its danger. Beneath the castle, in a chamber built by Slytherin himself, we see the ultimate symbol of this trait. The basilisk was not merely a monster, it was a guardian of a philosophy, however flawed. Its placement signaled a belief that the past should shape the future, even violently. Though the ideology was tainted by blood purity obsession, the execution of the tradition, hidden, protected, preserved, was meticulous. The chamber endured through generations because its architect understood that legacies must be buried deep to survive turbulent ages. Respect for tradition also meant that Slytherins were often the best at understanding ancient magic. Horace Slughorn, a Slytherin through and through, was a master of potion-making, not just because he was intelligent, but because he studied the great brewers before him. He revered the subtle art of alchemy, collecting rare ingredients, ancient tomes, and even memories, like one would gather sacred scrolls. His office was a museum of magical legacy, and in that room, tradition was alive. Even Severus Snape, arguably the most misunderstood Slytherin, embodied this quality. His mastery of occlumency and the creation of spells like Sectum Sempra were not acts of rebellion alone, they were the work of a man steeped in the ancient ways. He annotated textbooks not to undermine them, but to improve them. He did not reject the past, he reinterpreted it. The very act of rewriting magical understanding while honoring its structure is the highest form of traditional respect. When Dumbledore spoke of Tom Riddle, he noted the boy's fascination with his ancestry. Riddle discovered he was the heir of Salazar Slytherin and embraced that identity with fervor. "I can speak to snakes," he told Dumbledore. "They find me. I can make them do things." That affinity was not only a genetic accident, but the manifestation of a boy searching for roots. However dark his path, his descent into evil was not without echoes of this same Slytherin respect for legacy, twisted but undeniable. In contrast, students from other houses often approached magical history with detachment or even derision. The way students groaned through Professor Binns's lessons said everything. They saw the subject as tedious, missing the heartbeat of the stories beneath the dates. Slytherins, however, listened, they read, they remembered. When the Bloody Baron floated through the corridors, they did not flinch in ignorance. They knew who he was, a man steeped in tragic legacy, bound to the house through history and sorrow. The value of this trait becomes clearest in moments of crisis. During the Battle of Hogwarts, it was not a Gryffindor, but a Slytherin, Narcissa Malfoy, whose respect for her family's survival and the sanctity of her son's life bent the arc of history. Her whisper to Harry in the Forbidden Forest, "Is Draco alive?" was the turning point. She didn't act out of heroism or kindness, but out of a deep, unshakable loyalty to the tradition of blood and name. That single act, rooted in Slytherin-style devotion, saved Harry's life. Artifacts like the Resurrection Stone, the Elder Wand, and the Sword of Gryffindor are not merely tools, they are carriers of legacy. The wand recognized loyalty. The sword appeared only to the worthy. But who would most naturally understand how to respect these artifacts, how to approach them, not as weapons, but as historical extensions of the wizarding world? A Slytherin would, not because of entitlement, but because of education. The wizarding world is built upon tradition. From the goblins who forge goblets with ancient runes to the magical creatures who operate on instincts older than spoken language, magic itself respects the old ways. In that world, those who disregard tradition do so at great peril. Only Slytherins seem to understand that history is not just what came before, but what remains, waiting to be reawakened. During the Triwizard Tournament, one could see this contrast clearly. While Harry faced the challenges with courage, it was Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Moody, who taught about the unforgivable curses, not in theory, but with respect for their history and horror. This was not Hogwarts' curriculum, but it should have been. Slytherins often learn outside the walls in darker corners of knowledge, not out of malevolence, but because they understand that power must be studied to be contained. The Room of Requirement, a living entity within the castle, appeared for those in need, but it often reflected ancient needs and longings. When Dumbledore's army trained there, they were reviving skills nearly forgotten. The room became a modern-day echo of older practices. A Slytherin would have seen this not just as a convenience, but as a sacred space, proof that even the castle itself respected the past. When the founders built Hogwarts, they divided the school according to virtues, but only Slytherin demanded loyalty to legacy. "We'll teach just those whose ancestry is purest," the Sorting Hat sang in its older songs. This exclusivity was wrong, but the idea of preserving something through careful selection, however flawed, was born out of an obsession with continuity. Modern Slytherins, if freed from the yoke of blood prejudice, can still uphold that same spirit by valuing continuity without discrimination. In a world where magical catastrophes repeat with new faces and new names, history becomes a survival tool. Grindelwald's rise was not unlike Voldemort's. The fall of the ministry under Piers Thicknesser echoed the corruption of past governments. A Slytherin's training would be to trace those patterns, to notice when the past stirs in the present. In that way, tradition becomes foresight. Astoria Greengrass, wife of Draco Malfoy, raised her son Scorpius with less prejudice, but with the same awareness of legacy. She believed that history could teach empathy, that knowing where you came from helped you choose a better direction. Scorpius, a boy often misunderstood, carried his family's name not as a burden, but as a responsibility to do better. That is the ideal form of Slytherin. Tradition. Reverence that evolves. Even in death, tradition matters. The portraits of headmasters do not fade. They linger, whispering advice and history to the next generation. Phineas Nigellus Black, though unpleasant, was a Slytherin who consistently reminded others that the past must be considered before action. "You know, Minister," he once said, "I did express some concern about your appointment." His snide remarks masked truth. The past judges us, and often it is right to do so. This quality, if adopted by other houses, would transform the school. Ravenclaws would temper logic with context. Hufflepuffs would honour kindness within the frame of history. Gryffindors would learn that courage is more effective when it honours the lessons of those who bled before. Slytherins already live by this. That doesn't make them better. It makes them guardians, not of secrets, but of structure. In the forbidden forest beneath trees older than castles, centaurs read the stars like they read ancient runes. Mars is bright tonight, they say, but what they mean is, be careful. Slytherins would understand, respect for tradition is not fear. It is the wisdom to know that what came before is still speaking. One only needs to listen. Number 25, moral flexibility. Of all the traits that set Slytherins apart, none is more misunderstood than their moral flexibility. While it often bears the mark of suspicion, equated with cunning, betrayal, or quiet scheming, this particular characteristic may be the most valuable for navigating the complex realities of the wizarding world. Unlike the bold Gryffindors, the bookish Ravenclaws, or the loyal Hufflepuffs, Slytherins do not demand a clear moral binary before they act. Instead, they embrace nuance. They are not afraid to weigh a decision by its consequences rather than its purity. That is not cowardice or evil, it is realism, and in a world as chaotic as theirs, it is a skill worth learning. Severus Snape is the clearest embodiment of this principle. His story is not merely that of a double agent, but of a man constantly balancing on the razor's edge of moral ambiguity. His killing of Dumbledore is not a cold-blooded act of evil, but a deliberate, agonizing sacrifice. As the Phoenix songs fade into silence atop the astronomy tower, Snape acts not out of malice but necessity. "Severus, please," are Dumbledore's final words, not a plea for mercy, but a signal to follow through with their grim pact. Snape's actions that night secure Draco's soul, maintain Voldemort's trust, and fulfill a promise to a dying man. The act is horrifying, yet it preserves more lives than it takes. Few could bear such a choice. Fewer still would follow through. To understand why such flexibility is vital, one must look beyond individual heroism and into the tangled networks of survival. Narcissa Malfoy, a mother surrounded by Death Eaters, lies to the Dark Lord himself when she whispers that Harry Potter is dead. "Is Draco alive?" she asks in return, and when she hears yes, she trades truth for love. That lie, spoken on the battlefield, alters the course of the war. Without it, Harry would not have reached his final confrontation. Here, again, Slytherin morality does not arise from nobility, but from instinct, an instinct sharpened by danger and shadowed by fear, yet profoundly human. This willingness to navigate the grey areas is what makes Slytherins adaptable. Where others flinch at contradiction, Slytherins maneuver. Think of Horace Slughorn, who collects talented students not for power, but for protection. He hides his memory of Tom Riddle's question not out of complicity but shame. His eventual decision to aid Harry in the Battle of Hogwarts comes not after a moral awakening, but after years of careful evasion. When he does act, he does so decisively, joining the fray alongside McGonagall and Kingsley. Slughorn does not become a hero by renouncing who he is. He becomes one by realizing the weight of his silence. Even Draco Malfoy, so often viewed as the antagonist, demonstrates this. Tasked with killing Dumbledore, he hesitates not because he is secretly good, but because he understands the true cost of the deed. He lowers his wand, trembling, not out of cowardice, but because the world no longer fits the story he was raised on. His mother sees the same truth. Lucius Malfoy, once a proud enforcer of Voldemort's vision, crumbles into a man who would rather run than reign. Their retreat from the final battle is not a betrayal of the cause, but a surrender to clarity. The war was never about power, it was about survival. Contrast this with characters whose sense of right and wrong is rigid. Take Percy Weasley, whose blind faith in the ministry causes him to estrange himself from his family. He returns to the fold too late. Fred is already dead. Percy's conscience is noble, but it leaves no room for flexibility. He learns too late that loyalty to truth does not always mean loyalty to what is right. If he had seen the signs earlier, if he had questioned, perhaps the cost would have been less. The tragedy is not in his choice, it's in how long it took to make it. The wizarding world itself is not black and white. The Ministry falls under Voldemort's control not because of one villain's power, but because of decades of bureaucratic complacency. Dolores Umbridge, a woman who prides herself on rules and order, becomes a tyrant not through deception, but through relentless adherence to a system. "I will have order," she cries as she carves words into students' skin. Her moral code is strict and deadly. She represents the danger of inflexible ethics. She never questions, never considers, and in her certainty commits atrocities. Slytherin flexibility offers a counterpoint to this danger. It teaches students to question what is presented, to consider alternative paths, even uncomfortable ones. This is not a lesson in selfishness, it is a lesson in thinking beyond appearances. Harry himself learns this when he uses unforgivable curses. He casts the Cruciatus and Imperious curses not out of cruelty, but necessity. There was a bang and a yell of pain. Travers was thrown backward, and Harry, still invisible, yelled, "Crucio!" Morality in wartime is not pure. Even the boy who lived must bend. This flexibility also fosters strategic thinking. Albus Dumbledore himself, for all his wisdom, was not a saint. He sent Harry to be raised by people who despised him. He withheld information. He made plans that risked lives. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. His decisions were always aimed at the greater good. But that greater good came with cost. Dumbledore's morality was not Gryffindor's roaring charge. It was Slytherin's quiet calculation. He understood that sometimes the path to peace must pass through shadow. Slytherin's gift is not that it teaches students to be bad. It teaches them to survive the bad, to think their way through fire. When Harry tries to save everyone, he is brave. When Slytherins save only those they must, they are called selfish. Yet often they are the ones who endure long enough to shape the next day. When the Carrows rule Hogwarts, it is not just Neville who resists. It is also Slytherins like Daphne Greengrass who protect their siblings, or students who join neither side, choosing instead to bide their time, waiting for the right moment. Andromeda Tonks is another Slytherin who chose moral complexity. She marries a Muggle-born and is cast out of her pure-blood family. Her decision is not fueled by rebellion, but conviction. She raises Nymphadora in love and fear, knowing the cost. When war comes again, she stands alone, having buried her daughter, her son-in-law, and her husband. She endures not because she followed the rules, but because she broke them for love. Her Slytherin roots gave her the strength to choose and to pay the price. In times of peace, moral clarity may be easy. In war, it is a luxury. Flexibility is not the absence of morality. It is the presence of wisdom. It is choosing which battles matter. It is knowing that sometimes to save a life you must lie. Sometimes to protect your family you must betray a master. Sometimes to win a war you must let the enemy believe they've won. These are the truths Slytherins grow up understanding. The Sorting Hat itself hints at this when it says, "Those cunning folks use any means to achieve their ends." The key word is means, not end. The end is often survival, or protection, or victory. The means, though difficult, are not chosen lightly. Slytherins are not careless, they are deliberate. That is what makes them dangerous and what makes them useful. Their presence in any group forces others to question, to weigh options, to prepare. Even Tom Riddle, before his descent into monstrosity, was a master of perception. He understood people. He knew how to manipulate not only through fear, but through favor. I can make things move without touching them. I can make animals do what I want them to. I can make bad things happen to people who are mean to me. He was not a monster at birth. He was a child who learned early that power lay in bending, not breaking. His lesson was twisted, but the root truth remains. Influence lies in understanding grey. If other houses borrowed this trait, not the manipulation, but the flexibility, they might find new strength. Hufflepuffs might learn to say no, Gryffindors might learn to wait, Ravenclaws might learn that not all truths belong in books. A little Slytherin in the right hands is not corruption. It is seasoning. It allows one to act not from impulse, but insight. Moral flexibility does not mean forsaking principles. It means knowing which ones can bend and which must never break. Slytherins are not empty of conviction. They are full of careful ones. Their loyalty is not loud, but lasting. Their courage is not in battle, but in choice. And their love, when given, is not for glory, but for safety, for family, for survival. When Narcissa lies for Harry, she does so not because he is the chosen one, but because she is a mother. In the end, this trait is not just useful, it is necessary. A world of only Gryffindor bravery might burn itself out. A world of only Ravenclaw logic might miss the emotional truths. A world of only Hufflepuff loyalty might sacrifice too much. But a world that includes Slytherin's shadow might survive the night. For when the final decision comes, when the world is trembling on the edge of ruin, it will not be the loudest voice that saves us. It will be the one who saw it coming, who prepared the pieces, who made the hard call. In that moment, the most valuable ally is not the pure-hearted hero. It is the one who dared to make peace with Grey, the one who bent but did not break, the one who, like Severus Snape, took the fall so that others could rise. That, above all else, is what Slytherin offers, and that is a lesson worth learning.